Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm here with Biggy, coach of Team Dignitas, the European SPL team. This is the start of a new video series I'm doing, and basically, we're going to look at something to do with Smite. Usually Oceania, but maybe in the SPL every week, or at least I'm going to, and just focus on that, talk about that, you know, something interesting that happened basically. And something interesting that happened this week was that the previously undefeated LG Direwolves dropped their first game to an Oceanic team in something like 5 months. So that's a pretty big upset, and to a roster full of new players. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the game from picks and bans, focus on particularly important moments, and just analyze what went down in the game. And hopefully, that's something that you guys will enjoy, and we can do more of it. And we might talk about some other stuff in the meantime as well. But B, we're going to start off hearing the picks and bans. What are you seeing so far?
I the Bologna ban makes sense because obviously, like, we saw Rowe playing Bologna, yeah, like at IEM, and he kind of like those games are like a bit pub stompy, just because I think a Bologna is like a pick that I heard a bit about, like, O's drifting into the OC meta before Masters, and then obviously heading into Masters, like I spoke a bit, and I like coached Direwolves for that event and spoke to them about like what they wanted to play. Like I had a specific kind of like tier list that I thought they should be playing, but they had like their own opinion, obviously, things that work for them in scrims, and so we kind of like meshed the two together. And I wasn't really happy with the drafts against Avant overall, but I was pretty happy with the legacy drafts, and I think that's just like a standard ban. Like they're a bit, maybe not, like probably a bit scared of it after seeing it at LAN, and then Raven just makes sense. So does Terra. Although I'm a bit. I would have thought that maybe Darksider would have looked for maybe the Terra or the Fafnir like first pick, but I guess they want this Saket or the Fafnir.
Well, Dai was gone ahead and banned Osiris here, and this is, I think, this was for me especially the big first question mark of the game was letting the Circuit through when they said how dominant it was at Smite Masters. And I mean, yes, Osiris was dominant as well, but just the sheer like killing ability of Circuit, and the anti-heal and her presence around the map. It seems to me that Direwolves would have had a better time up against an Osiris than they would a Circuit.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Osiris is strong. Like the kind of the solo meta right now is like those kind of death toll like Bologna, Osiris, those sustained early pressure gods. But like I agree, Osiris is strong. Like, and that's obviously why Maniac played it like every game against us at Masters. But I don't think it wins you the game. Like at that whole set, like people I think commented, maybe they should ban the Osiris or take the Osiris. Like there was times when I wanted to take it, but Variety felt comfortable playing against it, so I was happy with him. If he's confident, then I had confidence in him. But I don't think Osiris wins you game. I think Saket wins you games though, and I also kind of question not picking Fafnir because Fafnir was probably the thing that won. Like obviously, not like straight up, but like in the draft phase, those last few games, Fafnir kind of made it awkward for us, and Emilzy played like pretty insanely on Fafnir, and plus with the new Lono's mask as well, he just like if you're farming with Fafnir, you get so much gold, and like you're pretty much like you probably have the most gold in the game for like the whole game if you're farming properly. And Fafnir was a pick that I spoke to Richard about, when we were leading into lane. I said, just play Fafnir Terra, like they're so broken, they're such top tier supports right now. And kind of the whole team was pretty hesitant to play Fafnir, and that kind of worried me because I just feel like he was so good then in that patch, and now he's even better. So, but I guess they're probably leaning more towards the way that, and they just wanted the Thoth like another, which is a fine pick. But I feel like both these teams just letting Fafnir through is pretty poor drafting, like in my opinion.
Poseidon and HughZ though are still two pretty strong picks, especially Poseidon at the moment seems to be really valued by a lot of teams. I guess just a lot of pressure he puts out early, but also a decent amount of crowd control, particularly the Whirlpool, more so than anything else really in his kit. I mean, HughZ is strong. We saw that in the NA relegations today. But there's this Khepri pick. I mean, what do you think Dial's reasoning was for picking the Khepri here over, say, a Fafnir? Like, if you had to guess.
I think it's just like comfort. Like they practice a lot with Kepri. That's one thing that Richard said to me is like they haven't practiced a lot of Fafnir or playing with it. Kepri's like something that I think Richard played or split. And I guess if he doesn't get Terra right now, he probably defaults to Kepri as his next pick. And I imagine that they assumed it would be banned out, so that's why they'd pick it. As for like the Poseidon, I think Poseidon's something that's I think it's overrated in OC like pretty heavily, and I think NA plays it a bit, but EU kind of I haven't seen a Poseidon in a long time in EU because I just don't think people respect it anymore, and it tends to get bullied a lot. The HughZ though, I love the HughZ pick. Like I think HughZ is possibly the best hunter in the game with Kernanos at the moment, and I just don't think you can ever go wrong with like picking HughZ now at the current state of the medicine.
We'll get to these next few bands in a second, but you just touched on Kernanos. Talk to me a little bit about him and what he brings to a team. He seems to be. You were saying Poseidon seems overvalued. I think Kernanos right now is overvalued.
Um, I don't know if he's overvalued. Maybe like uh maybe a little bit, but I know for us we rate it highly because like if we first pick it, like it's like we have Arkle, like we just know that he can do like insane things on the god, and it's kind of one of those picks where like at just like the lane presence and the lane, the potential to bully a lane and then rotate and then have that much impact, like that the ultimate, like the 1.5 second silence, blah blah blah, like that kind of impact in a team fight on a hunter that can also spit out like ridiculous DPS is kind of ridiculous. But I probably agree that it was maybe more of a fear thing. Like we started playing it in scrims and it seemed to do really well, and it was probably one of those things where people weren't used to playing against it, so it got a bit overrated when it got to land. People didn't have enough time, so now that people have enough time to like play against it and like they know what it does, a bit like the Raven jungle. Like once you kind of know what it does, like what it's going to do, it's going to look for that, like that kill on the first wave, and then like that ridiculous pressure kind of around the map early. Once you have time to practice against that, you can come up with maybe some counter picks or like a different start to kind of avoid that early bullying. Then you're a lot more comfortable. Like we're a lot more comfortable playing against Raven now, and I think the same thing will happen with Kernanos now. A lot of people will be just kind of like, it'll still be like a top pick, like a top 3 pick. You'd want him on your tier list as like probably still like one of the top 2 hunters in the game, but he's not going to be like banned every game or first pick, first banned every game.
Alrighty, so these next couple of bands we saw from Darksider, they banned Herc and Kabrakan. Direwolves banned Athena and Fafnir. Is there too much noteworthy in those bands, or should we just look straight ahead to the picks?
I think the bans are fine. I think they're just trying to target Gruff out, put him on something that is unsafe and immobile. And I think Gruff, like I know when I used to play Gruff, he didn't have the best positioning, so it was kind of, if he was on something immobile, there's always potential to pick him out, and he does have a bit of a knack for dying a bit in games. So, but I think the one thing I don't like though is that OC played Chalk. I think Chalk is just a garbage god and should never be picked. But I just don't think he brings anything. Like I don't know like why you would want to Chalk when you could play something like Erlang Shen or probably any other warrior, maybe like even like Vamana or something. Even though Vamana's not, I probably wouldn't want a Vamana either, but I would just pick Erlang Shen there.
Even though Shark has like better wave clear, arguably, or safer wave clear.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like viable maybe, but for the early game, obviously. But I just think like outside of that, like what does he have? He has no real kind of. I just don't think he's got like, I don't think he bullies the lane enough to warrant his lack of like mid to late game kind of presence.
What about his silence though on his ult? Silence and a knockup. Like those are two extremely big forms of CC.
I mean, if you want to pick Chalk, easy.
I'm just saying. Chalk. Look, I'm just trying to have a discussion here. Like, but isn't that a fair argument for Chalk? Like, I mean, that's two big forms of CC that not many other warriors provide.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. Yeah, but I don't. It's just something about him. I just don't think. Like, I think regardless of that, I don't think he can kind of stick stick to a god like a Bologna or an Osiris, right? Kind of have that continuous lockdown. Like they're never gonna run out. Like yeah, Chark has the slow, but I feel like you're you're not really worried about. You're not really scared of kind of, you don't go into a team fight being like, oh, this Chark is gonna lock me down because generally if you have decent positioning, you can kind of just avoid him around the fights, and like it doesn't take much to really peel him. Whereas like a Bologna or an Osiris have that continuous kind of slowing, that continuous kind of like damage. Chuck like initiate with his 1 and his 2, I guess, and then he's kind of slowing you and auto attacking you, and is easily peeled off. Whereas like Osiris has both Osiris and Bologna have that kind of follow up with the ult, and that a lot more like CC and pressure.
Fair enough. Okay, so our last few picks here: Hunbats for Rogue, Ymir for Kiki, and then I think the biggest pick of this pick and ban phase is got to be this Ares for Gruff.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's kind of like in a way been banned out. Fafnir's Athena off the table, Capri, Terra, like probably the top four. I mean, he maybe could have. Their draft is obviously a bit physically strong. You would want to maybe draft to look for an Amaterasu, maybe a Warrior support. But I guess I think Ares is fine. Like I've seen Emilzy play Ares and do well on it. I think it can work. But into Hunbat's Ymir and Capri, it probably shouldn't have too much kind of relevancy.
I think that in combination with the rest of the dark side of the draft, it's a smart move because you look at some of the CC on that team. I mean, Ares is just like a natural beads burner. It leaves Direwolf's Drug very vulnerable to a lot of the rest of what Darksider wants to do. Like, would you say that? I mean, I guess Saket's the most important piece to Darksider's draft, but comparing the Ares to the Poseidon, which do you think was kind of more vital for their game plan?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's kind of tough. Like, I would probably not want to play Ares into that comp. But if he can get good blinks, kind of, it depends on kind of his positioning and the timings of his initiations. Because I just feel like, regardless of if he's blinking in, there's a lot of kind of dive. Like if Rose blink, if Gruff's blinking, Rose probably going to be on this Poseidon, right? And as soon as and then you have also like the Kononos ult to kind of peel as well and initiate. And anyone who's like getting pulled is probably then gonna get saved by Capri, so it's risky. But then again, like with Ares, Capri is probably a little bit abusable in that sense as well. So I don't think the pick's like terrible, but I think he has to play it well. And but I don't know. I don't think either like the Poseidon or the Ares is particularly like kind of more important than the other. I'm not really like familiar with these teams. I wouldn't say I don't really know like what their plan is. Like with a lot of the EU SPL teams now that are like a part of EU, like the Pro League, there I kind of can tell like from based on scrims and things I can kind of understand the teams and why they pick certain things, but I'm not really familiar with Darksided, especially since it's like a whole new roster.
Alrighty. So, just based on looking at the picks, then before we head into match, picks and bans are so important nowadays. We saw that a lot at Smite Masters as well. Just looking at these two drafts, who would you say won in quotation marks the pick and ban phase?
If I was to go purely off of like tier list kind of, I don't know, I'd say it's fairly even, honestly. I don't know how strong kind of Guardians are in solo right now. So, but then again, like, he's picking Shark in order to kind of like beat a Ymir in lane, and then like a Ymir's gonna have so much more presence late game and more control. But I would say they're fairly even. Maybe a touch leading towards Direwolves, but not by much.
All right, cool. All right, we're going to go ahead and head into game. All right, now that we're in game, taking a look at a few of the starting options for these teams, I want to look at the Sunder Richard's picked up. So I've noticed this from a lot of supports lately is picking up Sunder right at the start of the game. Isn't this like a really risky option to go?
I think like a lot of the talk when Med was getting nerfed was like, especially I was speaking to Dials a bit, and they were like, oh, yeah, maybe it'll be like more of like a sundering, like super aggressive kind of meta. And I don't think the pickup's bad here. Like I think they have kill potential, like level 2 or 3 if he can get a probably level 3 if he can get a if Richard can get a combo off on Gruff with this before like Sunder and then get his combo off. Then with the Kernos they should have pressure. It's like right here though. I think. I mean, Richard's kind of making a mistake. I think they should have just gone for the kill, straight onto Hui. Like they, if he sunders Hui and they commit, then they get that kill. But I mean, he just kind of just gets chained and lets himself, does some beads. Kind of just lets, I don't know. It's kind of like HS was a bit like that at LAN as well. I don't know whether it was just out of practice or nerves or something, but he seemed a bit out of character at LAN. Like he was dying a lot. His positioning was a bit poor, especially in the early laning phase against Avant. He got picked a few times based on just like bad decisions. Like when I think Kepri threw his two. I think there's one stage where whoever Tomolomi threw his Kepri 2 over Mingyu, and he beats like for no reason. That was kind of like a worrying sign for me. But
we saw over on the left-hand side after after Gruff and Laney won that 1v2 and picked up the kill on Domingue, they went and invaded the left-hand side jungle of Dials, and they only picked up the small creeps on the purple buff, and then went for the full red buff. Why not just commit full onto the purple buff and then full onto the red buff?
Well, I don't know. I see, like it's kind of hard, like timing wise, because I don't think you could do both without then missing the wave. But I think that's the right decision. You definitely like if they go for both, they probably lose lane pressure, and I think you want to keep your pressure. But also, like purple buff's not really that like amazing. Whereas, like I think that's right. If you take the purple smalls and then you commit to the red, then it's also less risk of having the red buffs on, because yeah, you would probably drop the purple, but by the time you drop the purple, you would then Richard and Mingyu would probably have pushed the wave and be able to rotate in and contest the red and then make it a 50-50. Whereas like if they just guarantee themselves the red buff, they can probably keep the pressure then and go back and do purple. But I guess they drop back and did their own purple.
So Dials is now down 2 kills, down about 1.5K of gold. We can see there's more kills being picked up across the map and things like that. What have you got to do here as Dials when you find yourself in this kind of situation when you're this far behind this early?
I mean, and like Kiki, like, are you at the same time as you?
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Kiki joining as well. I think it's hard for Dials because they've not really been in this position for a long time where like they've had a really bad start, and I know that maybe a couple of them are prone to a bit of tilting if things don't go their way, because for them, like the way I see it for them is they almost beat Energy, right? Obviously game 2 was a bit one-sided, but they don't they think that like, and fair enough, like they shouldn't lose to these teams. So to be this kind of far behind against players that they obviously think they're better than, in a team that they think they're better than, and they should just almost beat on kind of like some sort of autopilot, like probably be a bit tilting. I'd say the best thing from behind is just to just to reassess and try and gain lane pressure back and just keep on top of timers. Firstly, by defending like any of your own timers, and then kind of like working your way up the map, looking for picks when you can, kind of recognizing your strengths in your comp and just trying to abuse those until you can get a lead. So for Dials, I'd probably be trying to abuse this one bouts, maybe try and pick this Ares early before he, like he's gone into Teleria and he has watches, so he should be like easy picks with the Hun Bat Thothol. So I'd probably just look for like the simplest combo to try and just look for picks and gain some pressure back and like some control in the jungle.
Well, speaking of these Teleria boots on Ares, we could see on the other side, Richard's gone for the opposite path for reinforced shoes or guard boots, however you want to say it. How do you make that determination of which type of boots you're going to go for?
I mean, I think the meta's drifted towards more of just a reinforced Greaves meta. I personally just love reinforced screws. I think the tankiness, like the quicker you can be more like that front line is the better, like better. And I don't. I mean, it depends on what you can think you can get away with. If you think you can, like their comp isn't really gonna be able to commit to you, then you just want to hyper farm and get your procs off and get your Talaria and get your Vanguard and then maybe your Thebes or your Silver online first, then that's fine. But there's probably also certain comps where like you're going to get a lot more value out of the Greaves kind of passive.
I mean, wouldn't you think as an Ares, especially since you're diving in, blinking to ult and get beads and things like that, the reinforced shoes would be kind of almost the default, because you're going to go in and, as you said, like in the pick and ban phase, like you should look for this Hunbats to ult and the Thoth to ult straight onto the Ares as he goes in. Like, isn't reinforced shoes just like the first thing that comes to mind there?
Yeah. I personally would go reinforced Greaves like 100%, probably like most games on Ares, like, but like especially into Humbats, you know, like the Capri 2 Thoth kind of poke, and then follow up with ult. Like definitely, I would have gone reinforced Greaves here. But I mean, if he can get away with it, then fine. It's risky. It's very risky. That's all.
Yeah. So underleveled as a jungler, which is what we're seeing Ro at the moment. He's level 6. He's ulted once in 6.5 minutes of the game. Like he only hit level 5 a few minutes ago. That's got to be one of the toughest positions to be in as a jungler, is that far behind. Like how do you like fix that? Like you said, for the other lanes, like you can like push up your lanes and you can you know, establish pressure. But like, what do you do as a jungler?
I can't really speak a lot because I haven't, like, I wouldn't know like the true ins and outs of the role because I've never really played it at a higher level. But I kind of think jungle would probably be the hardest level because you rely, I guess, like when I played support, like if I was behind a level or two, like a bit of an item, it was kind of fine because I could still initiate and like target properly and kind of peel. Like it wasn't too bad. Like obviously it had an impact on my tankiness and things like that. Like how much peel I had based on like my leveling, but I was still generally fine. I imagine like as a jungler, there's probably nothing worse than being behind. As Ro, you know, like if he dies again here, you know, that's pretty rough. And then he's gone into the Vanguard, so he's trying to live a bit longer, but he's delaying his damage even more. So it's going to be like, for him, it's a really rough period because it's going to be a long time before he kind of has any sort of impact in comparison to the impact that like a 5-on-1 Saket's going to have at 8 minutes.
Gold Fury and objectives, as we're watching a fight break out over here. Gold Fury and objectives were really the talk all of Smite Masters, and you know how EU teams had such great objective control compared to NA teams, and just simply playing the map a lot better than their North American counterparts. You know, how important is the Gold Fury, you know, kind of aside from the obvious things about it? And, you know, since you've been in EU, what are kind of the things you've learned about playing around objectives?
I think, so I'm a big, like, probably the one thing I like my favorite thing about Smite is obviously, like, I like to play a map correctly, like, and efficiently. And that was one thing that when I kind of joined Dig, I was trying to like figure out like who's going to shot call, who's going to like make these kind of calls, and the calls that like if I was playing I would make. And so it's not easy, but I think one thing that E had compared to NA was just like a purely natural aggression. Like they're so aggressive and they're so confident kind of in their objectives. Like if they see a split opening, they don't hesitate, and they I'm not sure, I can't really say about NA about their comms or like their pre-planning, things like that. But the NA teams we played seemed very passive, like almost like they didn't expect us to be that aggressive. That, you know, maybe their scrims were very kind of passive and more about like farming and then like kind of contesting the objectives rather than just pressuring them and forcing the other team in, and if they don't force, then like you commit. But I mean, that was probably the major difference. Obviously, drafting, the EU meta was like a lot stronger again as it was at Worlds, but definitely the aggression. It just seemed when I was watching like taking notes for Soul games and Eager games, it was kind of like I don't know. They just didn't respect the fact that we would be that aggressive around objectives, and we got a lot for free.
And so, just generally, when playing around objectives, like, you know, obviously, shot calling is so important. What's kind of the main things you've tried to impart to Dig with that shot calling that you're kind of touching on a little bit before?
I think just like micro comms, like small things like calling percentage. A lot of people tend to think like if you want to force an objective, oh, like you want to make a play for an objective, you could honestly probably do it every wave. If you just said like push the wave, go to gold, let's do start gold, someone zone, someone tank, someone DPS, call percent, and then I'll make the call. And as soon as anyone pushes in, you go, okay, go back and farm. You could probably do that every wave if you wanted to. Like, and that's the kind of things that I think a lot of teams lack is if you have good communication, you can kind of do what you want, and you should kind of like be able to just do this whenever you want, and then make the call. Like as soon as someone makes the call, like okay, they're pushing in, the right call there is just to reset, go back to lane, push our waves, and like get our pressure back, and then come back and do it again. Whereas like a lot of teams and a lot of players are very quiet. They kind of hesitate. Like maybe they stay in an objective too long. They don't call percent. They don't go in zone. They don't realize that they need to be tanking while someone else does damage. Or like maybe like a carry's tanking, but he's not asking his frontliner to tank it for him. So I think just clear communication and confidence. Like confidence in the fact that like if the call doesn't look good, then you can just if the play doesn't look good, then just be like, okay, no, reset, blah blah blah, and then like you lose nothing really. I think it's that hesitation that when that hesitation comes in where teams make mistakes.
Looking at this game thus far, Darksided find themselves at an advantage, and you know this is a place that you found yourself many times, both while playing here in OC and coaching Dignitas. What have you got to do as a team that's ahead to keep your lead and not throw it away, like we saw Direwolves do against Energy at Smite Masters?
I think you just got to recognize your kind of. I think from ahead you want, or like obviously from either like ahead or behind, you always want to be kind of structuring your fight, but it's obviously a lot easier from ahead. Kind of. The thing for me that I think Gruff has kind of realized is that he can abuse this Capri. So if I was him, I kind of like these kind of split fights I wouldn't be forcing. There's just like it's just not necessary. Like there's no point for like Gruff to be there forcing that fight, because even if they get a kill there, the rest of their team's in solo, and he's probably poked out, so they can't really get anything from it. So it's like there's 0 point in him forcing that fight. Like if he wants to keep them there and not fight, and then like and they're getting a win in solo, then that's perfect. But there's like 0 reason for him to fight, and I think you kind of want to keep it from ahead, especially. You want to keep that kind of discussion up, like as a team. It becomes like even more important as a team that you're all on the same page, and like yeah, you have to go and push your lane and keep your lane pressure, but then like you need to be like communicating, okay, I'm going to do that, and then like where is our next play as a team going to come, like whether that's an invade or like whether that's warding or whether that's looking for pressure or looking for a specific pick. So I would kind of like if I was Darkside in this position, I would say we have a huge Saket. Their win condition maybe is if they get like a big like Kun Batselt into Thoth combo, so let's kind of play around that. If I'm Gruff, I'm looking to kind of blink and guarantee. I'm looking to grab the Capri and probably one or two other carries preferably, just to kind of because like I know that I'm going to pull this Capri and I'm going to throw their whole fight off if I've got this Capri in the middle of my team, and then if he gets Krakened or if he's Krakened and marked in a HughZ, then he's going to have to ult himself, and then he's probably going to respawn and die again anyway. And then other than that, like, that's me if I was playing support, and then for everyone else, they should kind of have, like, their own kind of, like, individual goals in a fight. Like, if I'm Yada, I'm kind of playing back. I don't want to be the one getting Humbats ulted, Thoth ulted, so I've got to watch my positioning for that. I've also got to watch for walls like Ymir walls. But then besides from that, I've got to be patient and wait for my Kraken, kind of off of Gruff's ult, or maybe them committing to Gruff off of his blink if I can get a good ult. So like individually, obviously you want to have kind of like a team purpose, but then outside of that, you've got to have like how are you gonna like achieve this? Like how are you gonna structure your fight? And then obviously you have like different things like relics. What relics do we have? What don't they have that like will sway your kind of targeting and your planning in the fight? And then obviously you want individual execution and individual communication to be like, okay, if I'm Gruff, like this is what I'm doing, this is who I'm targeting, this is what I'm avoiding, and then same, like you want each of your carries and like your rest of your front line to do the same thing. Like maybe if Gruff's blinking in, then and he doesn't want to get bursted, then like he can ask for maybe Zach to dive the backline with his ult and silence and cause disruption so that he can get out like a form of peel. I think you just want to have planning, and I think that's like I've played on a lot of teams and kind of, well, not a lot of teams, but like a few teams and coach teams, and I think that's one thing is people don't kind of structure or adjust their fight throughout a game, and that's one thing that I learned when we scrimmed against Obey at Masters. I got to listen to their comments a bit, and the one thing about them is they are always critiquing like their play. Like I remember listening to them. We scrimmed them and they got a 5-man fire giant against us, uncontested. And after the fire giant, I think one of them called themselves out for not tanking correctly or not tanking long enough. And I was like, you know, like that's why these guys are so good, because obviously they're good players, but also that's why they're such a good team. They are constantly critiquing everything they do and then trying to adjust that so next time they do it better. And I think that's what a lot of teams lack, even at the highest level, like in NA and EU.
So looking at Direwolves then, and you know how they've gone at this game, obviously not terribly well. At 17 minutes, they're 8.5k experience down, 8k gold down. What, you know, if you're in comms with Dials at this point, what are you saying? Like, say you're shot calling for Dials, what are you telling the team at this point? What are you telling them? How do you get back into this game?
If I'm Dials, I mean, you could maybe like Ymir, like this pick on Ares here, but not over-committing, kind of poking. I think this is the moment I remember where Yada gets a really good Kraken off and kind of turns the fight. I think they had the right idea, but a few people lacked kind of the positioning and maybe the confidence in the call and didn't commit to Gruff quick enough. And then eventually, you know, Richard shouldn't have gone for that pull. Is a bit greedy in front of a Poseidon. I think they have the right. I think from behind you always kind of want just that one pick, like one pick and turning it. If you watch like our games against Enix, at the end of the last split, we pick Lobster in the jungle, and it's like, yeah, they're 10k ahead, but you know, if a Vulcan has 12k gold and you pick him for free with using one ult or so, then you're in a 5v4 and you're basically like you're even with an extra, you're even gold wise in the fight, and you have an extra man. So just that one pick, you just want to be like structuring your play, looking for that one pick. And generally off of that, like, if you get that early pick from a team that's ahead, you can cause disrupt against a team that's ahead. You can cause disruption in their comms, disruption in their play. You know, they can't really make a play even if you don't get another pick and you don't turn the game off of that pick. You just waste their time, and then you can use that time to gain pressure back and maybe structure late. You know, like how are we gonna do this again? Like, can we get vision up? Basically, it's a shit fight, and it's tough to play from this far behind, but it's doable. Like, and maybe you have to get that same pick 3 or 4 times in a row to eventually turn the game and then get more picks and get the gold like minimized or back in the lead. But that's kind of, I think that for me definitely the moment is just that one pick can turn a game.
Is there anything in terms of builds you would change on either of these teams, really?
I don't know. I'm not really like a builds guy. I'd probably have to like sit here and look and be like, yeah, blah blah blah.
I bet he saw that going differently.
For us, like it's more Zara's kind of does builds for everyone. That's not really an area that I'm really confident. Like I know a bit, but I'm not really confident in because I kind of just played support for 2 years and built Sovereign and Heartwood like a brain dead monkey. So.
What about Gladiator Shield though? Like, it's in a resurgence. Like, is it really Like, I mean, do you know a little bit about that item? Like,
Yeah.
is it really that valuable?
I think maybe it's being overvalued a bit. I think one thing, like it's at IAM Sydney, which I saw, I think Charcoal's building it on Chark, but I mean he obviously thought he was playing on a different patch, so it's kind of rough. But I think maybe it's being a little bit overrated by OC. But I mean we haven't really scrimmed a lot yet, and I'm not sure if Variety's built it, and I obviously don't really play Smite in OC for obvious reasons, but so I haven't really had the chance to test it. But I still feel like maybe breastplate would still be the stronger item. And I don't really know, like, if you want to. It's kind of like a bridging item as well. It's fairly cheap. I don't know if you'd want to build both or build it that late. I don't think it gives you enough.
Alrighty, I'm looking though at both of these mid laners and the Spirit of Desolation, and we've seen people that say, you know, why pick it up early? It's so expensive, and other people be like, expensive? That's pretty cheap, 2,600 for all those stats. Like, you know, and you say Zeros is mainly the build man. He's also the mid laner. You know, can you speak at all to kind of like his thoughts on Spirit of Desolation?
I think he likes Spear. I think because maybe it's a bit different now with Spear of the Magus once we start scrimming with that a bit more. But I think he likes Spear because there was just not many pen options. I guess you could go boots Helm and then into damage, but it's just as far as pen items go, yeah, it's quite expensive, but it does give you a lot. Like it does give you kind of value for money once you eventually get it online. I think I would have liked to have seen Cheetah build a Doom Orb though. I mean, he started Lost Artifact, so I think I would have liked to have seen him kind of build a Doom Orb and then the boots and then the Spirit of Desolation. And I think he's going into an E-Staff now. So.
Yeah. Alright, so we just saw a Phoenix defense from the Direwolves where they punished Gruff for going in. What are you calling during a Phoenix defense? And like, you know, Direwolves played that one pretty well. Like, what's, you know, how do you fight that defensively? Like, how are you supposed to defend against teams that are what, like 12k experience, 11k gold up with Fire Giant? Like, you know, what's the calls? What are you doing?
I think I've noticed teams are getting a lot better at kind of defending sieges. It's pretty tough. Like, and even from like 10k up, like your composition and your initiation can have a huge impact on whether or not like you can actually siege that Phoenix. Even from 10k up, it can be tough. But for me, for Direwolves, I'd probably generally you want to kind of force the fight under the Phoenix, but you don't want to give them enough positioning that their ADC can just bang on the Phoenix and get it for free while they're kind of disrupting you in the fight. And you also want to avoid their initiation. Like they're obviously looking for initiation. For Darkseid, it's kind of predictable. Like the blink area, Ares is going to blink ult, and then maybe Chalk will throw his axe TP in an ult as well. So you want to kind of avoid those. And if I'm Direwolves, you could almost maybe use that to your advantage and probably bait him into ulting, and then they have a Sunder, so look for the Sunder kill, Sunder into Hunbat's ult, into Thoth ult, and pick the Ares. And kind of then take the fight from there, but try and keep it under your Phoenix.
Well, we can see they did it once, they're not going to do it a second time. Now we're heading towards kind of like the stage of the game that I think a lot of teams struggle with, because you don't necessarily always get the most practice at it, and that's ending the game. And I know particularly in OCE that a lot of teams struggle to end games. So 2 Phoenixes are going to be taken here. You know, why doesn't Darksider just go for the win? There's still like 20 seconds left on Cheetah and Kiki's respawns. They're relatively healthy in terms of their carries and things like that. Like, why back out? Why not just go for the win? And even if you don't get the win there, how bad is it from how far ahead you are and what you've just gotten?
I think it's probably the right call not to go for the end there, because there were like Beast was quite poked, And there's not really much. If he's that poked, he can't really get in and damage a Titan. Like he's just gonna like as a cat, he's just gonna get killed. I think the incorrect call there was to go right instead of left. I think if their plan was to kind of, I think you would always want to go mid to left based on the fact that you would want the two lanes furthest from the fire giant to be pushed in with fire minions if you have to defend, if you have to contest or like play for the next fire giant. So I think that's kind of, but I think it was the right call not to try and end. They didn't have any, they kind of just killed the Phoenixes, they didn't have fire waves. Maybe they would have had a couple of minion waves, but I think it was risky. And as far as like the fact that OC players, like OC teams don't know how to like end games, I think that's just because I know when I play like casuals and things like that, like you get away with a lot because I feel like a lot of players don't know like what they're capable of or like what they can take or what fights they can take and what's like I guess theirs on the map, and they just have a lot of hesitation. They kind of maybe don't get enough practice in, yeah, like you said, they don't get enough practice in enough situations and haven't had enough practice to kind of realize, you know, well, like this is the scenario, this is what we can do, this is where we should go, like, and kind of sequence that before it happens. I mean, obviously, like with two Phoenixes down, like in fifth and this far ahead, you should never really lose this game.
Yeah.
Unless you kind of start trolling or like you completely lapse in concentration. And then I mean, again, like there's not much. Like Richard just gets picked, even like he has beads.
So I just rolled us back a minute here because I want to talk about this fight. Why does Direwolves take this fight and contest the fire giant? Isn't it better just to fight under your Titan, even if Darksided have full fire giant?
I mean, they probably have good steal potential, but I'm not sure. Like, and that's one thing that if you watch the Direwolves vs Energy games and speaking to the Direwolves after those games, is there was a siege where they siege mid tier 2, and I think they have fire, and they go to siege at tier 1 on the left, and they get kind of like picked in the jungle, and it turns the game, and or just it stops their momentum, and eventually Energy get back in the game and then turn the game and win. And it's because it's kind of like a lot of so like top EU teams. And sometimes like I do not see a lot of NA games, so but I'm sure they probably do it too. But like these kind of like, I call them like set plays where from behind you're like 6-7k behind, maybe they get a Phoenix, maybe they get fire or something. And what happens is teams are so used to players like, okay, they get fire, give up all their towers, maybe defend a tier 2, but definitely don't go into the jungle to defend your jungle. Maybe if you can sneak your jungle before they reset, do it. But what teams aren't used to is like kind of unpredictable aggression where maybe, and we've done it a bit in scrims where, and we did it against Enix when we got that pick and turned the game eventually, is just kind of, you know, like have faith, you know, like we're going to push up our waves, push 2 waves, they're going to reset, they're going to kind of being a bit lazy, like they're not going to have their senses about them. Let's get a sentry in their jungle, make sure we're not on a ward, sit behind a wall and wait for a pick or 2. Like if 2 people go out of the jungle 5v2, we can pick them before they can even react. And that's what kind of Energy did to Direwolves at Masters. And I think kind of OC isn't aware of that, or like doesn't quite have the confidence. Like from like 6-7k behind, they're kind of happy to just funnel in and from that same positioning and kind of take the fight and just hope for the fact that they outplay. Whereas I think if they push their waves and they're a bit more strategical about it, they could have maybe like gotten a pick or won a fight. But when you're just tunneling like that from 15k behind and you have, you know, you're underleveled and you're behind in gold, then you're just like, unless you're against a really bad team, you're just pretty much just gonna like, you're pretty much just holding W at each other and seeing who has more damage. And I mean, obviously Darksided's gonna win that fight. And I think that just comes out of, I don't know, it's just maybe a lack of experimentation or a lack of confidence to kind of like, you know, it's maybe a lack of confidence for someone to like structure a play and like make that call. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. This may be a bit janky, but let's go for it. And then they're more happy to just like go with kind of the default play. And if they lose because they were going to lose anyway. Like there's no one to blame. But it's like, oh, if we go for this janky play and it doesn't work, then like, oh, maybe if we just played standardly, we would have won. So I think OC teams especially should kind of be a bit more creative in how they defend objectives or how they play them out from like behind. But then again, like you have to take in the fact that tilt factor and like just the pressure of being that far behind, you're kind of not thinking clearly. So there's a lot of aspects to think about at that stage of a game in that position.
Fair enough. All right. Look at these post-game stats. Anything stand out to you at all? You think it's worth mentioning?
I mean, the Beast went 14-2.
Hashtag stay with Beast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess Row went Vanguard from that far behind. Probably not. Like you probably would just want to build damage and try and get your damage online as quickly as possible. I don't agree with Bead Sunder. Bead Sunder on Kepri at all. Especially, maybe that could have gone differently if they didn't die level 1. But I feel like as a Kepri, you're not going to be in the fight that you shouldn't be that heavily involved in the fight. Like I get it's Ares, but still you should maybe like I would have definitely have liked to seen a shell like into Poseidon and maybe then even a sprint over the Sunder. But I'm not totally against the Sunder, but I definitely think the combination isn't very beneficial. Apart from that, I think like Yada played pretty well. It's good to see Yada playing mages. That's some hype.
Finally, it only took him a year.
I think he's more comfortable in mid. So.
Okay, so
especially.
So looking at this Dark Side roster and what you saw from that game, how much potential do you think they have?
They have a lot of potential. They're all like kind of like, apart from Zachariah, obviously, like I guess you would say they're like veterans of the scene. Beast probably hasn't been around as long as the rest. I think his first like pro team was Insight, and then
whoa!
Zachariah's kind
dude.
of.
What are you talking about? Split 1 last year.
Yeah, dude. Okay, Trident Esports, the Beast of Trident Esports.
There you
go. And Zach has been around like even less, but I think Zach's someone who's kind of always had potential like in casual games, and I think he subbed for Avant for a while. And he's a good player, so I think they have a lot of potential. I think their kind of success will depend on how much the individuals kind of improve and kind of perfect their own play. Like Beast is still fairly new to the jungle role, and Yada's obviously played mid before, but is back, playing mid after playing jungle for however long a split, and he took the last split off last year. Zach is, I think he played a lot more jungle when he first started, before he started playing competitively. But I mean, yeah, I think they definitely have potential. They could probably challenge Direwolves, but I think individually they need to grind and like get up to the standard of the Direwolves, like individual players as well, or like at least close, if they're to have like any sort of chance. And then obviously team play is important, but they're surprising me. Like I thought maybe they would be a bit weaker than they looked. But then again, you kind of have to take into the account the fact that Direwolves haven't really played the game since Masters, so I wouldn't be overhyping this kind of win too much.
Where do you see him in terms of the rest of the OC scene, though?
I think they could definitely be the second place team. I know people have been talking up Kanga a bit, but it's kind of the similar thing to Rival, where like we knew Rival were good in scrims from like week 1 of SPL, but they never really could kind of translate that into their SPL games. And so when they went into Gauntlet, everyone was like, oh, you know, his Rival, like, meh, they're like this 6th place team. But like we all knew, like all the EU teams that had scrimmed them knew like these guys were sick. Like, and we were sitting there, we're like, okay. I remember talking to a few of the Dig guys, being like, you know, Rival could win this if they actually show up, and then you know they did, and they won the Gauntlet. So it depends if Kanga can take like these apparent scrim results and then translate that into the Pro League games against Darksided and Legacy and Direwolves. And Legacy, I think they only made the one change, right?
Yeah, just Freemason into the jungle.
I think. I was trying to think of who I think will do better out of Darksided or Legacy. I like to say Legacy. I mean, sorry, Darksided. I don't know. I just have a lot of faith in like Laney, Beast, and Yada. I think if Yada grinds mid and Laney, like I think Laney is such a sick player. If he focuses on the game and and if he takes it seriously, like one thing that towards the end of Insight was I felt like he kind of didn't take the game seriously enough for my liking. He was kind of like happy just to like chill out a bit, and maybe he'll disagree with me, but that's definitely like a vibe I got from him when we were scrimming. But like there's a reason like I always wanted to play with him, and like I love playing with him on LAN because he was just like so good. I think if that core, like those three can kind of improve like gradually, then I think definitely they'll be stronger than Legacy.
Would you think it's fair to say, this is kind of my opinion, is that at the moment Legacy might be stronger, but Darksided, the more that they practice, should overtake them?
Yeah, it's hard to say though, because going off of like LAN, Legacy kind of didn't look like good at all. But I couldn't, and I don't know. I still have a question mark over Freemason. Like I think he's a good player, and I've heard his comms. Like I think he's kind of someone where I think I've heard his comms on a few streams, and I was like, oh, like this guy has like a pretty good understanding of the game that not many like players I've listened to have. So I don't know, but I still can't I don't think I can put either one ahead of the other at the moment. I'd like to see them play each other, I guess.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to wait a couple of weeks to see that one. But that's going to do it here for this video. Thank you very much to Biggy for joining me. Any shout outs before you go, Biggy?
Oh yeah, shout outs to my best friend Harry Cumming.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully we can do some more of these videos in the future. Maybe we'll switch up guests. Maybe we won't. We'll see how it goes. But thank you everyone who stuck through this and watched it all, I should say. I know I found it very helpful and insightful. Hopefully you will too. And hopefully this means we can make more of these videos. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that usual jazz that people ask you to do. And we'll see you next time.